Om Tavagatamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhavignanti ye Bhurita Jana. Thy words of immortality, full of divine glories, they are praised by the sages. They eradicate threefold miseries of life and also our sins. Those who spread thy message, O Lord, are the benefactors of this world. The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Let us for a few moments reflect on that immortal aspect within us. Om, peace, peace, peace. We are on page 92, the second paragraph. It was dusk. The master was meditating on God. Meditation, real meditation, means to become one with the object of meditation. And the master was meditating on God. He was one with God. Many people ask, well, we read this words of the master in the gospel, but you must read it with that faith that Sri Ramakrishna is meditating and connected with God, is one with God, and we are now reading those words. In a way, we are reading and understanding about God. Because the Upanishad says, Ananya prokte gatiratra nasti. When a person speaks the truth, that person should be one with truth. And only then that person can speak. Otherwise, it will be a kind of a intellectual conundrum. Is there or not there? And it will be just a kind of intellectual discourse. So that's the reason why the Upanishads also says the teacher should be one with that, with what he speaks or what he knows. Because here your intellectual queries and all have now been all over. You're coming and directly listening to the words of Sri Ramakrishna, who is identified with God. And he also says, I tell you, I do not know anything but God. So these words, they are charged with that power of divinity. Then he says to M, go and talk to Narendra. Tell me what you think of him. Now, he used to do something like this. Even later on, we come to his asking M a similar question. It was more not to become friends with him or get acquainted with him. It was more to understand the spiritual depths of a person. Because Sri Ramakrishna held Swami Vivekananda in great esteem. He used to say he is Shiva himself. And by trying to understand what Swami Vivekananda was, it will give Sri Ramakrishna an insight into M's own spiritual development. It's a kind of index. So it was not just, what do you just go and listen and talk to him and then tell me what do you think of him. That wasn't the ordinary idea of that motive that we have. You go and spy on him and tell him, what do you think of him? What does he say? Tell me. Nothing like that. It was to gauge the spiritual estimation of M. Evening worship was over in the temples. Now there was these 12 Shiva temples, and then there was a Radha Krishna temple, and there was a Kali temple. And Kali, the temple, some of you have gone there, it's a huge uproar. All the drums and the cymbals and the gongs and all are banged together to make that kind of loud noise. So it's like we have Vespers here, something like this. Subdued, of course, here. And then M met Narendra on the bank of the Ganges and they began to converse. So it's most probable that they were conversing in something called a Chandni. That's the open portico where the steps are there that lead to the bank, from the banks they lead to the river Ganges. That was a favorite place for everybody. It was just adjacent to his room. But of course, there are two staircases that lead to the Ganges. One is the Chandni, that's at open portico, and the other one is near that old tree, Bakul Tala. The Tala is beneath the old tree. That tree still stands. Narendra told him about his studying in college, his being a member of the Brahmo Samaj, and so on. So Swami Vivekananda, he has studied in Scottish Church College. And we know that Professor Hastie, who, when he was explaining the poem Excursions, was trying to make the students understand the state of ecstasy that the poet describes. And then he said, if you really want to understand what's ecstasy, go to Ramakrishna Dakshineshwar. That was one of those leads that Swami Vivekananda had got to go and meet Sri Ramakrishna. So Professor Hastie was, as I say, he was an Irishman and he was very learned as being a professor, and a member of the Brahmo Samaj. As we see, he was one of the main, you can say, singers of the Brahmo Samaj. You know, they had these music and these services and all these things. Swami Vivekananda was much beloved in that circle. It was now late in the evening and time for M's departure, but he felt reluctant to go and instead went in search of Sri Ramakrishna. He had been fascinated by the master singing and wanted to hear more. Holy Mother says, oh, his voice was so melodious. And after listening to Sri Ramakrishna, I don't like to hear anybody else. None can compare his, you can say, his singing voice. Ordinarily, he used to stammer a bit in his conversations. But you know how stammerers are. When they sing, they really sing. All the stammer just disappears. And it was really the closest comparable, you can say, singer would be Swami Vivekananda. He was also a master singer, a musician, of course, and he could really sing. And he, like M, he wanted to hear more. Even you would like to hear more. He had found, he found the master pacing alone in the Nat Mandir in front of the Kali temple. Now, the Kali temple is the whole, that sanctum sanctorum. In the architecture of Bengal architecture of temples, that was a separate house, a temple, and there was a kind of a, Nat Mandir is a kind of a concert hall where the devotees would sit down. There's always a gap between the two. The main, you can say, shrine, as well as the it used to be called a concert hall. But devotees used to sit down and view the arati. Those who have been there can see that. A lamp was burning in the temple on either side of the image of the Divine Mother. That Divine Mother, as you say, it's Kali. She was called at that Bhavatarini, one who helps cross the ocean of samsara. Bhava is samsara. So that was, and those who have seen the image in the evenings with those two lamps burning at the side, it's heavenly. He writes about it. And then a single lamp in the spacious Nat Mandir blended light and darkness into a kind of mystic twilight in which the figure of the master could be dimly seen. So it's quite a large area to be lit by just a single lamp. Yes, it's a kind of a mystic twilight. The whole thing becomes so quiet. And in those days, not like today. Today it's all noise and shouting and people and everything around. But when everybody leaves in the evening, it's like even Belur Math. Everybody leaves in the evening, then you see the charm. There's a kind of a, not a mystic twilight, it's a kind of a mystic tug to your spirit. And to see Kali in that kind of light, the statue itself is black. Kali is black. Why? Not black because she is black. Sri Ramakrishna gives the example. When things seen at a distance, like a sky or water, appears blue or dark, but when seen close up, there is no color. So when Kali is seen at a distance, from a distance, she appears dark. But when seen up close, she is without any color. M had been chanted by the master's sweet music again. But with some hesitation, he asked him whether there would be any more singing that evening. No, not tonight, said Sri Ramakrishna, after a little reflection. Then, as remembering something, he said, but I'm going soon to Balram Bose's house in Calcutta. Come there and you'll hear me sing. M agreed to go. This is now Balram Bose, as we know, Sri Ramakrishna visited his house 100 times. And he called Balram Bose's house his Calcutta parlor. The master, do you know Balram Bose? M, no sir, I don't. Master. He lives in Bospara. M. Well, sir, I shall find him. Para is a locality of the Boses. They were the Bose. They were big landlords and they had huge property. And the current state of the house, which is, of course, it belongs to the Ramakrishna order now. Just opposite that house is Girish Ghosh's house, right now in the center of the road. So the entire property was huge and it dominated that locality. As Sri Ramakrishna walked up and down the hall with M, he said to him, "Let me ask you something. What do you think of me?" Yeah, here it is. How, Sri Ram, M has visited him a couple of times. 3 times he has visited him. And he's asking him, what does he think of him? This is also another, you can say, not a ploy, but it's something that you use to gauge your spiritual development. He never used to ask, outsiders, people unacquainted. But for those inner circle, he used to ask, what do you think of me? And he got various answers, and sometimes he was pleased. There were some disciples of him who, on the first instance, say, "You are God himself." And Sri Ramakrishna used to be thrilled. Look at him. I asked him and he said, see how deep his spirituality is. He has been able to recognize me. And that's the reason why he said, what do you think of me? I don't understand what you mean by, he's saying, how many annas of knowledge of God have I? Now, annas is in a rupee. And the rupee has, you can say, had been divided into 16 annas. There were 16 annas. 16 annas made 1 rupee. So how many? Like cents and dollar. So M says, I don't understand what you mean by annas. It's annas, but pronounced annas. But of this I am sure. I have never before seen such knowledge, ecstatic love, faith in God, renunciation, and Catholicity anywhere. The master laughed. So this was what he wanted to gauge. What was his initial reading? When we go to a place, our minds always judge things. We're always evaluating things, whether it's good or bad, or okay, passable, something like that. That's the nature of the human mind. We constantly evaluate things. So in the spiritual evaluation also, he's talking about what he has seen. So he has evaluated Sri Ramakrishna in this way. He has never before seen such knowledge, ecstatic love, faith in God, renunciation, and that all-embracing Catholicity anywhere. So he's getting close. M bowed low before him and took his leave. He had gone as far as the main gate of the temple garden when he suddenly remembered something and came back to Sri Ramakrishna, who was still in the Natman, the concert hall. In the dim light, the master all alone was pacing the hall, rejoicing in the self, as a lion lives and roams alone in the forest. Yes, this was how Sri Ramakrishna used to pace, walk. When we see him, most of the, movies or documentaries made on him, they show him as a kind of weak, and sometimes his voice is so thin, reed-like, and he's got hunched shoulders, and he's so kind of soft and always weepy. It's just impossible. For one who knows the self, this is exactly how his portment, how his gait, how he looks and walks and talks will appear, like a lion. And that's what the Vedanta also says. Nirgacchati jagatjala pinjara deva keshari. Now we have a journal called the Vedanta Keshari, the Lion of Vedanta, published in Chennai. Vedanta it's not Keshari, that's like a lion. Like Buddha also says, like a lion not trembling at noises. So this world has ceased to affect this kind of person in any way. That person strides. These are the fearless ones. You know, when a lion is growing up, it knows it's a king. Yeah. You see, it doesn't get frightened. The others guy are told, run away. When you see a lion, run away. These are fearless. They grow up with that kind of attitude. So a person who has, as they say, rejoicing in the self is called Atma Rama. That is rejoicing in the Atman. So what does the person do when the person is not engaging with other people? That person goes inside deep and rejoices in the self. As the Upanishad says, Atma Rati, Atma Kida, Kriyavan, Sa Brahmavit Varishta. So this person, he becomes Atma Rati, he delights in the self. Atma Kriya, the one who his activity is only in the Atman. So these are the real workers and the best knowers of Brahman. And it has often been described how he used to stride, walk up and down. And he used to appear so tall. So that was another configuration, that it used to beat people. He appeared so tall. Not that he was short, but then he appeared when he was in that mood. In silent wonder, M surveyed that great soul. A lot of people could not just approach Sri Ramakrishna when he was in that mood. It used to keep them away. They were awestruck. But when he used to kind of be playful and talkative and mix around, then that mood used to kind of break and he was approachable. Even Swami Vivekananda, even Holy Mother, when they used to be quiet and know that profound depths, that silence, it used to keep people away. Oh, there was some air that was telling people, this is something special. Master to M, what makes you come back? M, perhaps the house you asked me to go belongs to a rich man. Was, of course. They may not let me in. I think I had better not go. I would rather meet you here, Master. Oh, no. Why should you think that? Just mention my name, say that you want to see me, and someone will take you to me. M nodded his assent and, after saluting the Master, took his leave. This is the end of this first chapter. Just a note here. Sri Ramakrishna used to understand things at a much deeper level. When he said, go and meet Narendra, the future Swami Vivekananda, told them, they formed a lasting bond. This was the beginning. And when Swami Vivekananda and his family was in dire straits, secretly, he used to send money to help their family because they were starving and they were thrown out of their ancestral home. Everything. And Vivekananda had no job also. So later in one of his letters, he writes, I am indebted for the rest of my life to him. He also used to send money for mother's maintenance when she was in Jainambati. Though, of course, he had his differences, saying Sri Ramakrishna never wanted us to do all this activities, building schools and hospitals and this and that, which was the need of the times in India. He asked us only to pray and meditate and do japa and dhyana, etc. And so they were at different ends of the spectrum of ideological, you can say, loggerheads. But later on, he himself understood Swami Vivekananda's, you can say, actions and thoughts and recommended it for everybody. Chapter 2. About 8 o'clock in the morning, this is now March 11th, 1882. Wow. Sri Ramakrishna went as planned to Balram Bose's house in Calcutta. It was the day of the Dol Yatra. Ram, Manmohan, Rakal, Nitya Gopal and other devotees were with him. M2 came as bidden by the master. As we have seen, we have been doing Manmohan Mitra. We finished Manmohan Mitras, the householder disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. Ram was his cousin, as we have seen, Ramchandra Datta. And Ram was also a cousin of Swami Vivekananda. So we have all that network out there. Rakal, who later became Swami Brahmananda, and Nitya Gopal. Nitya Gopal was a great soul. And other devotees were. So the devotees, the devotees of the master sang and danced in a state of divine fervor. That's called a kirtan. Now, Dol Yatra is celebrated all over India as also holy. It's a birthday of Sri Chaitanya also. And it is a time when you have Sri Krishna and Radha. They are displayed as having this Dol Yatra. They put the deity in a kind of a palanquin or a swing and they swing it. It's a festive occasion. Several of them were in an ecstatic mood. So, Bhava Samadhi, as they say. Nitya Gopal's chest glowed with an upsurge of emotion, and Raka lay on the floor in ecstasy, completely unconscious of the world. So here. So we have seen this. Nitya Gopal's chest glowed with an upsurge of emotion. Sri Ramakrishna used to often speak about this. The chest used to become red. Saying, even Sri Ramakrishna's father, when he used to just chant the names of God, his chest used to become red. It's one of those indications where all the blood is rushing up, obviously. But here he's saying glowed, and I don't know about a glow, but then I've seen red chest. I mean, not just because they're going to have a heart attack or something like that. But also they keep on the tears of joy. And like Rakal, he was completely kind of unconscious of the world. He lay on the floor. You are not in charge anymore of your body. something takes over and you are in a higher state of consciousness. It's difficult to explain, but this is something where it's not ordinary bhakti. It is bhakti of the ragatmika, the higher bhakti type. The master put his hand on Rakal's chest and said, "Peace, be quiet." Again, Rakal also, that means Rakal also chest was kind of red. This was Rakal's first experience of ecstasy. There it is. He lived with his father in Calcutta and now and then visited the master at Dakshineshwar. About this time, he had studied a short while in Vidyasagar school in Shampagur. Talking about the other mundane things which Rakal was associated with. But both Rakal and Swami Vivekananda were classmates. And their friendship grew from there. Swami Vivekananda was a couple of months older than Rakal. And till the very end, they were both, like as they say, twin souls. When Swami Vivekananda passed away, saying, "I feel as if the Himalayas which were there have suddenly disappeared." There was tremendous love. Of course, mutual. So here we have, during the Dol Purnima, Dol festival, this singing and dancing, and of course, this is called a kirtan. Even today, this festival is celebrated in Balram Bose. And our seniors used to say, "Hey, go and dance." I said, "We should dance." I want to dance. And we used to go now and then because there was good food after that. We were kind of hesitant, you know. We were young and everybody's going to look at you. But later on, we let our hair down and started dancing also. So it was thrilling, because what happens is, it's just a spiritual abandonment. You just let yourself go and go along with that chanting and the music and the fervor and everybody singing and dancing. So that was, and a small kind of chariot is taken around, that's during the Rath Yatra. So we have that same, it's a replica now, the old place is kind of dismantled. But that very place where Sri Ramakrishna sang and danced where all these things happened is still there. When the music was over, the devotees sat for their meal there. I told you, we had a good meal afterwards. Balram stood there humbly like a servant. Nobody would have taken him for the master of the house. M was still a stranger to the devotees, having met only Narendra at Dakshineshwar. Okay, we stop here for questions. Do you have any questions? Oh, no, nothing. Yeah.
Are we referring to the master here is Ramakrishna Paramahansa?
Oh, yeah. You can see, because I said the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you missed, of course. So, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna is the words of Sri Ramakrishna. Okay. So, if there are no questions, we'll read a little more. Okay. A few days later, M visited the master at Dakshineshwar. It was between 4 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The master and he were sitting on the steps of the Shiva temples, looking at the temple of Radhakanta across the courtyard. The master went into an ecstatic mood. As you can see, there are these steps. There's a huge courtyard, and there are some steps leading up to the 12 Shiva temples, 6 on one side and 6 on the other. The one closest to Sri Ramakrishna's room was the oldest Shiva temple. It was pre-existing. So they built a temple over it, and then they installed the other Shiva, you can see, symbols. And so devotees of Shiva will go to the Shiva temples, devotees of Kali will go to the Kali temple, and devotees of Radhakanta will go to the Radhakrishna temple. So everybody has a place there. So he was, and that was one of his places where he used to often go and sit down there. So he used to sit down on the steps and there and see that Radhakanta temple there. He went to an ecstatic mood. He used to, any small suggestion used to throw his mind into that state. That's because, as I said, the mind had become so super fine. That is what happens. How do you make the mind super fine? Do meditation. And how do you meditate? Well, you make your heart and mind and everything, as I say, conform to, as I've mentioned, the symbol or the image of the deity. It needs repeated practice. The yoga aphorisms say, Tatra pratyaya ekatanatan dhyanam. So in that, the cognitions in the mind, they form into a kind of a stream, one after another. There is no break. So there's one cognition rises, and the nature of the mind is to rise and go down in waves. It rises and goes down. So in this case, we have 100, maybe 1,000 waves in the mind. But in the state of dhyana, there is only one cognition. It rises, and as it sinks, gives rise to another one, another one. So what happens is you see that same image constantly, because the speed of the mind is very fast. It's like you run a film at 22 frames a minute. They are all still frames. But when you run it, it appears as if the person is moving. So similarly, when in that state of dhyana, meditation, the one cognition rises, second one. So if you can do that, you'll get into an ecstatic mood. That's the idea. If you can do that, you'll have something else, the opposite of ecstatic mood. You might get the mood, but something else. Since his nephew Hriday's dismissal from the temple, Sri Ramakrishna had been living without an attendant. On account of his frequent spiritual moods, he could hardly take care of himself. The lack of an attendant caused him great inconvenience. First is, for obvious reasons, these kind of people, they have hardly any body consciousness. And that's why you need somebody who will look after them, feed them, tell them it's sleeping time, it's this, it's that. You have to have somebody taking care of the body. And Hriday was dismissed from the temple. That's because he got into a trouble. The trouble was, he worshipped the young daughter of the proprietors, you can say, of the temple. So his Maturnath's son was there, Trailokya. And Trailokya had a small daughter. And he worshipped Trailokya. And when the girl's mother saw the red paint and the powder on her, what happened? Who did that to you? Nothing inauspicious if the level of that social level of the caste was correct. But this spelled kind of doom for the family. And so Trailokya comes and is saying, he understands it was Hridaya. He's saying, get out. Leave this place. And he had to leave. And then he sent a message also, even Ramakrishna can leave. And then I don't know what it was, how the message was transmitted to Sri Ramakrishna. But so Sri Ramakrishna was ready. He took his hand towel, put it across his shoulder, and he was about to leave. Now Trailokya, he got afraid. My God, if he leaves, then it's going to be a big problem. He was afraid of the consequences also. So he said, oh no, I'm not. I never asked him to leave, Ramakrishna. Oh, he put his towel back on his shoulder and came back and sat down again on the bed, as if nothing had happened. But Hridaya had to leave that place. And that was the beginning of his spiral downwards. Too bad. Because another reason why he used to, like all attendants, after a while, after a few years of attending, giving service to a person, they kind of have a kind of a control over that person. He's helping him, Sri Ramakrishna, but now he's trying to control him. And that was galling to Sri Ramakrishna and to other devotees also. But that's another long story. So he had told the Divine Mother, Sri Ramakrishna, Mother, take him away from here. And so he was taken away. Okay. So only pranams are there and nothing else is there. So we can. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think the analogy of Sri Ramakrishna as being like a lion, that's interesting. I was wondering if you talk just a little bit more about how he was perceived within that light.
Oh, the question is like he was pacing up and down like a lion. That was his stride and demeanor also. Like I mentioned, Nirgachati Jagat Jalat Pinjara Deva Keshari. Like a lion that rushes out of a cage made of straw. So does the soul, a Vedanta soul, rush out from this world, breaking its cage. So this is one example. They always use. Another illustration is, his guru, Totapuri, told him there was a small, Swami Vivekananda also related, there was a lion. Totapuri used the word tigress. So there was a lioness who was heavy with young, and she was hunting. And as she leapt to catch the prey, she died in the attempt, but she gave birth to a small cub. Now, this cub was brought up by the deers. And everywhere the deers went, the cub also followed, and it started, deers, or I think goats it was, bleating like a goat or something, going around, and it behaved exactly like a deer. And after years and years, it grew up, but it ate grass. And at the slightest danger, it used to run away. And that was how it grew up. And one day, another big lion comes and he sees a lion in the midst of deers. And he was surprised. What is this? Is this lion eating grass? How can that be? So he roared, and all the other deers and all fled. And this lion also was fleeing. So the other lion caught him, grabbed him, saying, "You're a lion." "No, I'm a sheep." "Oh, sheep, or I think it was a deer." Sheep, yeah. "I'm a sheep." "No." And he started bleating. He dragged him to the edge of a pond. "You see my face and see your face." And then he had a piece of meat. He made him taste that. And then, And then the elder lion roared. And then this young lion also roared. It had found its identity. So the you can say, use of a lion to describe a person who is a Paramahansa is very frequently it's not alien to using that. And he was something like this. He used to walk up and down like a lion. In many instances, even you'll find it in the great master, the descriptions of him striding up and down like a lion. There is something, as I say, unearthly about this kind of walk. You could see that's a kind of a divine being walking up and down. So that stature, that mood gives them the stature. That's what the thing means. Okay. So Vedanta makes you like this, fearless. And Swami Vivekananda says, fearless. That is my central message. That's why Vedanta is saying. Okay, we can. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. So the Friday we have Devendranath.